Welcome back. Today, we're getting right to the heart of a massive question. How do we actually make science better? And the answer you'll see isn't found in some super complex analysis after the fact. No, it's found right at the beginning, before a single piece of data is ever collected.
So let's just start with this number, 90%. Let that sink in. According to the source material for today's explainer, that is the rejection rate for a lot of top academic journals. Now your first thought might be, wow, okay, it's just really competitive. But this number points to something much, much deeper. A huge amount of scientific research is being rejected not because the ideas are bad, but because the studies themselves were fundamentally flawed right from the get-go.
And that really brings us to the theme of our whole discussion today, captured perfectly by good old Benjamin Franklin. This idea that it's way better to prevent a problem than to try and fix it later, well, that's the absolute key to unlocking better science. Instead of trying to rescue a flawed study with some fancy statistical footwork, what if we just focused on getting the foundation right in the first place?
And this really highlights two totally different ways of thinking about research. On one side, you've got the pound of cure. This happens all the time. Researchers get hyper-focused on the final analysis, thinking that the newest statistical tools can fix any problem. But on the other side, that's where the real magic is, the ounce of prevention. This is all about asking genuinely important questions and building a rock-solid research design from day one. And that is the big shift we're diving into today. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with that rejection crisis, then we'll walk through our 3 ounces of prevention. That means better theories, smarter designs, and sharper measurement. And we'll wrap it all up with a simple checklist for doing better science. Okay, so let's dig back into that staggering 90% rejection rate. The authors of our source article, who are speaking from their own experience as journal editors, they came to a pretty depressing conclusion. Most of the papers they rejected could have been rejected before the researchers ever even collected the data. The fatal flaws weren't in the final numbers. They were in the initial theory, the study's design, or how things were being measured. And this, right here, is the crucial point. In a lot of academic training, there's this huge emphasis on data analysis. So researchers come out armed with all this incredible statistical firepower, but the most powerful analysis in the world can't save a study that's built on a weak foundation. It's like trying to build a skyscraper on sand. It doesn't matter how fancy your tools are, it's just doomed to fail if that groundwork isn't solid. So, let's get to our first ounce of prevention, building better theories. The source article uses this fantastic metaphor, describing a lot of scientific fields right now as this huge garden that's just overcrowded with weeds. Weak, untested, or barely new theories. And to make any real progress, we can't just keep planting more seeds in that mess. We have to start pruning. We have to separate the strong plants from the weeds. So how do we find those strong plants? Well, for that, we turn to the philosopher Karl Popper and his critical idea of falsifiability. And honestly, this is a total game changer. Popper argued that a theory's real strength doesn't come from finding evidence that confirms it. Think about it. It's pretty easy to find confirmation for almost anything if you look hard enough. No. A theory's true strength comes from what it forbids. It has to make risky predictions that could actually prove it wrong.
And we can break Popper's idea down into 3 simple steps. First, a good theory has to say that certain things just won't happen. Second, confirmations only really matter if they come from those risky predictions. And third, and this is the big one, a genuine test of a theory isn't about trying to prove yourself right. It's a serious good faith attempt to prove yourself wrong. The goal is literally the pursuit of failure.
Now, this whole process starts with the question you ask. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Is this question truly important, or is it just new? Justifying research simply because it's never been done before just isn't good enough. An important question, according to our source, is one that tries to shift the entire consensus in a field. It either creates a brand new understanding, or it challenges an old one. The whole point is to change the conversation.
Okay, on to our second ounce of prevention, creating smarter research designs. Because even if you have a great theory and a really important question, a poorly designed study can completely torpedo the whole effort. It's like having a brilliant blueprint for a house, but then trying to build it with flimsy, cheap materials.
One of the absolute biggest design flaws out there is a lack of statistical power. The easiest way to think about it is like this. If there's a real effect out there in the world, statistical power is the probability that your study is actually strong enough to see it. It's like a telescope. If you want to see a faint, distant star, you need a powerful telescope. A low-power study is a weak telescope, and you're probably going to miss what you're looking for, even if it's right there.
And this is pretty shocking.
The source material points out that the typical study has only about a 50-50 chance of finding an effect that really exists. It is literally a coin flip. And a huge reason for this is sample size. With a small sample, you might only have that 50% chance. But with a larger one, you can boost those odds to 80% or even higher. That takes you from a coin flip to a pretty confident conclusion.
All right, now for a trickier design issue. Researchers love to include control variables in their analysis. The whole idea is to statistically rule out other explanations for what they found. But our source article asks a really provocative question here. Are these controls helping, or are they actually a trap?
Well, it turns out they're very often a trap. The source actually calls the habit of throwing in controls just in case a methodological vice. To use a control variable correctly, you need a strong conceptual reason for it, and it needs to be measured with the same high quality as your main variables. Without that, you can actually introduce more noise and confusion than clarity, sometimes even hiding the very effect you're trying to find.
And that brings us to our third and final ounce of prevention, sharper measurement. Look, if your theory is the blueprint and your design is the construction plan, then your measurements are your tools. And if you're trying to build something precise with a broken ruler, well, you're going to have a bad time.
The key idea here is something called construct validity. Most of the things social sciences study are abstract ideas. We call them constructs, like, say, job satisfaction or leadership. You can't see those things directly, so we use indicators, like survey questions, as a proxy. Construct validity is all about how sure we are that our indicator is actually measuring the abstract idea we care about. Are our survey questions a good proxy for job satisfaction, or are they accidentally measuring something else entirely?
And when our measurements are weak, when that ruler is broken, it can completely hide the truth. A real important effect out in the world might show up in our results as tiny, or maybe not at all. And the problem is, we don't know if that tiny effect is real or if it's just an illusion created by our bad measurement tools. Without strong construct validity, the results are basically useless.
So, we've walked through the three big pillars of prevention: stronger theories, smarter designs, and sharper measurement. Now, let's pull it all together into a really clear, actionable checklist that can guide the entire research process, right from the very start.
So really, it all boils down to this. For our theory, the problem is too many meek ideas. The prevention? Pursue failure. Design studies that actually put the theory at risk. For design, the problem is low statistical power. The prevention? Plan for enough power from the very beginning. And for measurement, the problem is that weak link between our concepts and our indicators. The prevention? Obsess over construct validity. That is the ounce of prevention.
And when you get right down to it, this is the main takeaway. The road to truly impactful, meaningful scientific discovery, it isn't paved with the fanciest statistical software or the biggest data set. It's paved with the quiet, rigorous, and deeply thoughtful preparation that happens long before anyone even thinks about analyzing data. It's all about the quality of the questions, the strength of the design, and the precision of the tools.
And that leaves us with one last question to think about. What is the real goal of science anyway? Is it to just pile up studies that confirm what we already think we know? Or is it to design studies that courageously challenge our assumptions, studies that risk failure in the pursuit of a much deeper truth? Based on everything we've looked at today, it really seems like the most valuable science comes from making that courageous choice. Thanks for joining us.